Okay. Good evening, everybody. I'm Daryl Lyons, the manager of policy at the City of Markham, and I think we're going to start now. So if the deck can please be taken down for a moment. And I would like to introduce Bijou Karamancheri, our acting commissioner of the Development Services Commission, to kick this off. Bijou?
Sorry, Daryl, I'm just getting my camera and thing working. It was good evening, everyone, and welcome everyone to Community Information Session number 3 for the Markham Road Mount Joy Secondary Plan Study. I want to also welcome and acknowledge the following members of council who are with us this evening. We have Mayor Frank Scarpitti, we have Regional Councillor Jack Heath, Ward 2 Councillor Alan Ho, Ward 3 Councillor Reed McAlpine, Ward 5 Councillor Andrew Keys, Ward 6 Councillor Amanda Colucci, and I believe we have our CAO, Chief Administrative Officer Andy Taylor here as well. I also want to, we begin this evening by acknowledging that we walk upon the traditional territories of Indigenous peoples, and we recognize their history, spirituality, culture, and stewardship of the land. We are grateful to all Indigenous groups for their commitment to protect the land and its resources, and we are committed to reconciliation, partnership, and enhanced understanding. This evening's session will introduce the interim report and present the draft demonstration plan for the Markham Road Mount Joy Secondary Plan area. The interim report and draft demonstration plan represent an important milestone in the journey to prepare a new secondary plan for this community and synthesize over a year of research, technical analysis, and consultation activities. Staff will also present a fly-through of a 3D model of the draft demonstration plan during this session. I look forward to hearing your thoughts on the draft demonstration plan and continuing the conversation to plan for the future of this community. I will now hand it over to Daryl Lyons, Manager of Policy. Daryl?
Okay, thank you, Bijou. Could I ask for the slide deck to please be put up on the title slide? So thank you, Bijou. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I would especially like to thank all of you for taking time away from a beautiful evening to be with us this evening. My name is Daryl Lyons. As I said earlier, I'm the manager of policy at the City of Markham. And with me this evening, we have staff from our policy and research group, our transportation group, municipal servicing, development, and urban design. We also have staff from our consultant team led by SVN Architects and Planners Incorporated, as well as supported by HDR Incorporated and Counterpoint Engineering. As Bijou explained a moment ago, the interim report and draft demonstration plan, they mark an important step in the preparation of a new secondary plan for the Markham Road Mount Joy community, which I'm actually going to go into and speak to a little bit more in detail in a moment. But before we start, I want to actually note that this session is being recorded. Some of you may have seen a new piece added to Zoom that'll come up with a little window indicating that it is being recorded, and it is also being live streamed to YouTube. So please keep your webcam off if you do not wish to be shown within the video. If you wish to ask comments or raise comments or ask questions as we go through the presentation today, please use the raise hand tool, which you can find by clicking in the bottom middle of your screen. You will see a reactions button. And from that, you can click raise hand. And then at one point, our facilitators, they will look at the different names that are coming up, and we will call upon you to raise your comment. And we really want to hear your feedback tonight. So as a courtesy to others, please keep your video off and microphone off unless you're called upon to speak. If we can go to the next slide, please. So we have an exciting and interactive program tonight. And with that, we're going to be talking about the study process, where we are today. We're going to be going through the interim report. We're also going to be showing you a three-dimensional model of the entire secondary plan area with the draft demonstration plan. So it really brings it down to the scale. So you can see some of the planning and thinking that has been going into this area. We're then going to be looking at the draft demonstration plan and the policy recommendations. And from that, we're going to have interactive sessions throughout all of this. So we have some really exciting pieces, including a live draw component. We're going to have polls. And then, of course, we also are going to have comments periods where we're going to be asking for your feedback, and we really want to hear that. So that way we can look into this a little further as we look at the draft and start moving the draft demonstration plan and the work done to date towards a final plan. So as you can see on the side of this agenda, where those speech bubbles are, that is where we're going to be having stops within the presentation in order to ask questions, share comments, share your feedback, have those live poll questions, and the live drawing exercises. If we can go to the next slide, please. And while the next slide is coming up, I would like to welcome and introduce and acknowledge Regional Councillor Jim Jones, who has joined the meeting. So this slide is our study process and where we are today. So it outlines the journey that we've been on to date. And some of you have been along this journey throughout since the beginning back in 2019, where we've gone through a kickoff meeting, we've had community information sessions, we've gone through a design charrette. We've really been going through a lot of effort and conversations, trying to really understand what is the current and future plans for this community. So further, the interim report, which is what you're going to see as we are here, is on the community consultation, phase 4. So in this phase 4 element, we're actually consulting on the interim report and the draft demonstration plan. A lot of the feedback that we've had through the earlier phases, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and the design charrette, the community information sessions, they have all culminated to this point, where we now have a draft demonstration plan and an interim report that builds on all of that wonderful feedback. And now we want to consult and come back to you. We want to hear your feedback, your ideas. What do you like about it? What do you think we should be thinking further about as we start moving towards finalization of this study? So as you can see in phase 4, we want to know that what you think about the work, what's been completed, especially on the draft demonstration plan and the questions. So that's where we're going to get into the polls, the interactive elements, etc. After that point, as you can see, moving into phase 5, that's a technical stage where we're going to be really running a lot of modeling, transportation, municipal servicing, all of those things to stress test the work that's been done to date in order to then derive and result in a final demonstration plan. And as you can see, the timing for that is to try and get that work done through Q2 to Q3, so ending into September, October of this year. And then as we move into phase 6, we're looking to finalize this study. And that at that point, we'll be coming back to Markham Subcommittee, Development Services Committee, and that will be in Q3 to Q4 of 2021. If we can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so at this point, I would like to actually have Lily, can you please put up our first poll? We just want to have this slide up so people have awareness of the area in which we're talking about tonight. As you can see in yellow, that is the secondary plan study area for the Markham Road Mount Joy secondary plan project. So for those that are online today with us through the live stream, we recognize that the Zoom link and the Zoom meeting does not show the questions. So I'm going to read out the questions so that way you can hear the questions. We are also going to be taking this poll, all of the results, and launching a survey on the Your Voice Markham page. So that way, for those that are viewing this through the live stream tonight, you can go onto our Your Voice Markham page and still complete the survey. So that way we can get a better idea about your ideas, your perspectives, as well as where people are from. So to kick that off, the first question, how did you hear about this community information session? It's multiple choice, so you can choose as many of those answers. And then once you're completed, please click submit. And then we'll bring up the results and we'll talk about that. And then we'll go on for a couple more questions. So Lily, once we have most if not all of the attendees that have filled in this question, please put up the results. Okay, So interestingly, over half of the participants tonight heard about the event through email, followed next by other. I'm curious about the other, if that was word of mouth or how that and sort of how that played out, as we're always trying to target how we sort of get the news and information out. Then followed almost equally by counselor newsletters and social media. So thank you for that. Can we move on to the next question, please? And while the next poll question is coming up, I want to acknowledge that Ward 4 Councillor Ray has joined the meeting tonight as well. So for this question, the question is, did you attend the 2 previous community information sessions about this study? Okay, so with the results, we have 71% of all participants tonight that are in the Zoom meeting have attended both sessions. So that's wonderful. It's great to see that we have people coming along the entire journey. So as we continue to build our understanding and knowledge of this area, that way we can continue building and sharing that information. So with that, can we go on to the next one, please? All right, so this question is, which of the following options best describes you? Are you a resident in the secondary plan area, a resident outside of the secondary plan area, a business owner, a landowner or developer, government or agency representative, or other? Okay, so and the results are in. We have 41% of our attendees tonight in the Zoom meeting are from government or agency representatives. We then, after that, have residents in the secondary plan area, which is fantastic because as we're planning for the current and future area, we really want to hear from you. And then after that, we have other. I'm always interested in the other, on what groups those fall under. But it looks like we have a really good cross section from different sectors that are attending with this meeting with us tonight. So with this, that concludes our first round on the polls for this evening. So keep your mice or touch screens ready as we bring up our next polls as we go a little further into the presentation. So with that, I'd like to actually turn it over to Blair Scourgy, who's going to be joining us, who's with SBN, and will be joining us and walking through some of the rest of the areas of this presentation. Blair?
Thank you very much, Daryl. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Thanks so much. Okay, so I'm just going to provide a quick overview of the interim report before we dive into the demonstration plan. So the purpose of the interim report is really to provide a summary of all the technical analysis and consultation that's been undertaken to date, and to present the draft demonstration plan and the policy guidance that's going to inform the preparation of the secondary plan as we move forward. Just very quickly, the report is structured to include a brief introduction, overview of the policy context and existing conditions, a summary of the consultation engagement process to date, the vision and the guiding principles, the draft demonstration plan, key policy guidance and recommendations, and a summary of next steps. The consultation engagement plan was developed to generate a broad awareness and participation in the study process among stakeholders and the public, and to obtain feedback to inform the development of the draft demonstration plan and policy guidance. It sounded like a lot of people participated in the charrette series that took place over the course of the summer last year. This included 3 Markham subcommittee meetings and 2 community information sessions. The design charrette was generated a significant amount of feedback centered on the vision, the guiding principles, and the emerging framework elements that laid the groundwork for the demonstration plan. The feedback was organized around several key themes and summarized using a live draw exercise. You can see the images here of that. Those themes are transportation and mobility, Mount Joy Creek, parks and open spaces, the environment, infrastructure, community services, employment, retail, housing, and finally placemaking. And this is just a summation of some of the other material. So with that, I will hand it over to Lily quickly, who's going to take us through a fly-through demonstration of the plan.
Good evening, everyone. Blair, could you just stop sharing so I can, thank you. Give me one moment to get set up here. Okay, thank you, Blair. Good evening, everyone. I am pleased on behalf of the staff and consultant teams to present a fly-through of the 3D model of the draft demonstration plan for the Markham Road Mount Joy secondary plan area. The 3D model was prepared using InfraWorks software and is intended to help visualize the draft demonstration plan, which contemplates the secondary plan area at build-out. As a reminder, the draft demonstration plan is a work in progress and will be refined by staff and the consultant team following consultations with stakeholders and the public, as well as transportation and municipal servicing modeling that will be undertaken in later phases of the study. Okay, so let's begin. Okay, we start at 16th Avenue and Markham Road at the southern limit of the secondary plan area. From here, we are traveling north over the Markham Road corridor toward Major Mackenzie Drive East. Turning around, we now have a bird's eye view of the secondary plan area looking south from Major Mackenzie Drive East. We're just going to pause here for a moment. And from this vantage point, just east of the Stouffville GO railway corridor, which is right here, we can see the general location of the potential GO station recommended north of Major Mackenzie Drive East. We are now moving south along the Stouffville GO railway corridor, which is the eastern limit of the secondary plan area. And a continuous multi-use pathway, which is this line here, is proposed from Major Mackenzie Drive East all the way south to 16th Avenue within the 30-meter buffer of the railway corridor. The blue arrow represents one of two pedestrian crossings, either a bridge or a tunnel, recommended to improve east-west connections over or under the railway corridor. So on our way south, we'll pause briefly again at Burrogue Avenue looking west. And in the foreground, you'll see the Mount Joy GO station lands, which include the parking lot on the east side of the railway corridor. As we continue south back towards 16th Avenue, we will pass the recommended location of the second pedestrian crossing over or under the railway corridor, as well as Mount Joy Community Center, which is located just outside the secondary plan area. As we turn to go north along the western limit of the secondary plan area, we can see another local landmark, Markham Museum, just northwest of 16th Avenue and Markham Road. As we continue north, you can see that the highest buildings and densities are proposed near the GO stations and along Markham Road between Edward Jeffreys Avenue and Major Mackenzie Drive East. Building heights and densities will decrease toward the Wismar Commons and Greensboro neighborhoods to the west and east, as well as Markham Village to the south. An improved transportation network and parks and open space system will provide connections and opportunities to move around the secondary plan area. So in a moment, we will pass over Mountjoy Creek for a close-up of the preliminary recommended alignment to reconfigure the creek, which is here. There's also an elementary school site proposed in this area within the podium of a mixed-use development. We are now moving south along Anderson Avenue toward the Mountjoy GO Station lands at Burrough Avenue. And looking down, we have another perspective of the Mountjoy GO Station lands. And from here, we will travel south along Markham Road back to 16th Avenue, where the fly-through will conclude. And thank you. I will now turn it back to Blair, who will provide some more detail about the components in the draft demonstration plan.
Thank you very much, Lily. Okay. So the draft demonstration plan forms the basis of the policy directions and the recommendations that are intended to inform the preparation of the secondary plan. So the plan is intended to be in keeping with and augments the vision and the guiding principles, which have previously been developed. It's been informed by the findings of the baseline conditions assessment and the consultation and engagement findings to date. It's emerged out of an iterative review and evaluation process, is based on a set of land use and built form assumptions, and introduces a set of preliminary development yields, which are still subject to revision. Finally, it's built on a set of framework elements, which I'm going to quickly describe in the following slides. So the first thing that we're going to look at here is natural heritage. So the draft demonstration plan incorporates a connected natural heritage system, which is based on the recommended alignment and configuration of Mountjoy Creek, which Lily just showed in the 3D demonstration. The lands designated as Greenway will occupy an area of approximately 5.8 hectares within the secondary plan area, following the alignment of Mountjoy Creek and its associated valley corridor. In addition to the existing daylit channel west of Anderson Avenue, as you would have just seen, this is envisioned to traverse east of Anderson Avenue in a piped configuration before turning southward and continuing adjacent to the Stouffville GO rail corridor in a daylit channel. Other retained natural heritage features include the existing Hammersley woodland, which is located further to the south between Edward Jeffreys and Burrough. So as I described on the previous slide, the preferred alignment for and configuration for Mountjoy Creek is constructive. It's constructible. Sorry, it conveys the regional flood event, and it benefits from existing grading conditions along the Stouffville rail corridor right of way. This allows for a deeper channel design and improved habitat restoration potential, while providing for the best net ecological gains in relation to the other options which were explored, as well as the existing condition. And I'll touch on those other options in just a moment. Finally, this configuration allows for the co-location of a multi-use pathway system, which traverses along the west side of the Stouffville rail corridor, immediately west of the channel. specific impacts on existing land uses and the acquisition strategy that would be required are still yet to be determined as part of this process. So here are the other 4 options which were considered in arriving at the preferred alignment. So the first option we looked at was an enclosed system along the proposed and existing Anderson Avenue alignment. So we're looking at the existing component of Anderson and then the southern extension of it. The second was an open channel adjacent to the proposed and existing Anderson Avenue alignment. The third was an open channel which ran adjacent to the rail corridor. And the fourth was a pipe system which ran along the rail corridor. So what we've really arrived at is a bit of a hybrid solution. So for ease of reference and for consideration in advance of the upcoming discussion, this slide summarizes some of the key policy directions that we have developed with respect to the Greenway system and the Mountjoy Creek system. And additionally, this slide summarizes some of the key directions that we have developed to date with respect to the woodlots, the stormwater management ponds, and watercourses. So this is what we've heard to date. The hope is that through tonight's discussion, what we want to know if we got it right, whether we're missing anything, whether or not there's anything else that we need to consider further, as Daryl mentioned earlier. So we value your feedback, and with that, I will hand it over to Shonda, who is quickly going to take us through a discussion focused on natural heritage. Shonda?
Thanks, Blair. Good evening, everyone. It's great to be back at this juncture in time in the process here. At this point in time, we'd like to hear from you about the natural heritage section that Blair just provided an overview of, including the policy directions and recommendations there. And specifically, I wondered if you could utilize, if you go to kind of the bottom of your screen, you'll see a reactions button where there's a raise hand feature. And if you have any thoughts about how we've treated natural heritage features and these assets that exist through our site, how we're looking to further bolster and increase them through our draft demonstration plan, including the Mountjoy Creek and the woodlot, we'd like to know your thoughts on that. Do you like how we've conveyed that and illustrated that? Do you think that we've hit the right policy directions to be able to protect for that space into the future? Or if there are other kind of thoughts you have on that front, please let us know. And Daryl will be looking out for any raised hands as they come along.
Okay, so no questions yet. Does anybody have any questions? As I mentioned earlier, Zoom has changed a little bit. So if you want to click on reactions at the bottom of your screen, and then you can click raise hand if you have any questions.
And maybe just as we're giving this a minute or so for people to sort out that function, you'll see that the screen's changed a little bit and we have a map of the demonstration plan. Kim is working with Blair and I in the background here, and she's got a camera on that. And along the way here for natural heritage, but for some of the other themes, if there are any thoughts or comments, we'll certainly be taking note of that and making sure we capture the feedback that we received tonight.
Carol, I don't know if I'm looking in the wrong spot, but when I go to reactions, it's I either have to clap, thumbs up, a heart, laughing out loud, shock, or party. And I don't know that any of those are the ones, but maybe it's somewhere else. But maybe just to start things off, you may have touched this on a previous occasion. Well, I think it's wonderful to have the open space and the linkages. Can you talk about what the plan speaks to, at least in terms of a trail through this area?
Sure. Maybe what I'll do is I'll pass the mic to Blair to be able to kind of walk us through it. I think Lily gave a really nice overview in the 3D model, but we can certainly look at it at the map as well. And then Kim, if I could just ask a favor, if you could take a marker as a bit of a pointer maybe you could kind of visually point out the areas that Blair's speaking to.
Certainly. Thanks, Shonda. I hope everybody can see this okay. Mr. Mayor, I just to confirm, I believe my understanding is the question is we're looking to hone in on the precise alignment and location of the multi-use trail system. Is that correct, sir? Yeah.
That and what portions of it relate specifically to the open space linkages here?
Okay. Thank you.
The natural ones. The
natural ones. Okay. So generally speaking, the multi-use trail is aligned alongside the west side of the Stouffville GO rail corridor. It sort of traverses throughout the length of the study area, moving from south to north or north to south, I suppose, along the eastern sort of most boundary of the study area. I think you can see Kim is kind of pointing to it right here. There is a point right where Kim's pen is right now, just near the school site, which is, yeah, right there. The location within which we're looking at renaturalizing and reconfiguring Mountjoy Creek. There's a point at which the multi-use trail needs to actually cross that creek, the daylit portion of that creek, and move sort of closer to the school site that we've shown there. And so, you know, a little bit further away from the rail corridor. And that's where it sort of begins to interface with that natural heritage system a little bit more. And as you continue moving further south between, you know, closer to Castlemore Avenue and southward beyond Castlemore Avenue, there's a bit of a sort of an open space buffer between the trail itself and the rail corridor. Eventually, when we move further south, sort of towards, once we sort of approach Mountjoy GO Station, the trail intersects with the transit plaza and then continues along a proposed extension of Anderson Avenue, which then sort of transitions into a local road before hitting 16th Avenue. And over the course of its length, that multi-use trail will intersect with existing cycling infrastructure on some of the study areas existing arterial and major collector corridors, which I believe are at Castlemore and Burr Oak. I hope that answers your question. There's also a park interface between the multi-use trail and just south of Mountjoy GO Station as well. So once it sort of leaves the transit plaza, it comes across the edge of a proposed park right there, about where Kim's pen is right now.
And Daryl, or sorry, Blair, I was going to ask Daryl, but Blair, what we see in the green here, is that what's remaining as the natural open space within the plan? Because it doesn't seem to quite match the previous one we saw. I don't know where we saw it. I think it was perhaps part of the 3D, but even there was I think a map you had that showed there might be some other parts of it that is open and green.
Yeah, so the lands sort of immediately east of the school site are a landscape buffer running along the length of the rail corridor. Those are all green space. The existing Mountjoy Creek configuration west of Anderson Avenue is to remain, and we're, in addition to that, proposing a new public park immediately west of the school site. I think, you know, Kim is highlighting that right now. And of course, the existing daylit portion of Mountjoy Creek is just immediately north of that. So these are the major sort of interfaces with the park's open space and natural heritage system.
Okay, in that area right now that was just drawn in, is there any connection from a trail system or pathway system through there up to 16?
Up to 16.
Or sorry, up to Major Mackenzie. Sorry, it's been a long day. Up to Major Mackenzie.
Totally fine, sir. It's certainly something that we can look at. What we're currently looking at is I believe it's correct me if I'm mistaken, please, Daryl, but I believe we're looking at a street connection, an east-west street connection there adjacent to the piped portion of the Mountjoy Creek
Okay.
to service the school. But certainly that's something that we could look into. There are, I think we're part of the reason we're here tonight is to seek feedback and input in terms of what types of uses we would like to see on the periphery of that natural heritage system. At Mountjoy Creek, we haven't sort of programmed them, so to speak, or determined anything definitively. But certainly things like trails along the periphery of the creek system are something that are on the table and worth consideration. So I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you.
And also just to add to that, Mr. Mayor, Kim, we may want to actually, as the deck actually has on slide 17, it shows the rest of the green space. I think it would be very helpful if you could just identify that the park on the south side of Castlemore on the west side, we have a woodlot further south from that. That's a really good question, Mr. Mayor, about the fact of the connection along that piped area east-west between just on the north side of the school site, and whether that's an area that we haven't figured out the exact programming for that and what that linkage would be, but that's a really good comment, because what we really want to do is we want to create not only just a transit-oriented community, but we want to have an active pedestrian-oriented active transportation network that runs so people can get east-west as well as north-south. So where Kim had put in sort of the dots in blue just on the north side of the school, also you'll have Anderson going north right up to Major Mackenzie, and then right in the development south of Major Mackenzie, there's also two park spaces there on either side. So there is a bit of a connection. We're really trying to create a spine that goes all the way north-south, and then look for any opportunity to connect east-west, to connect Wismar and Greensboro as well. Okay. I see that we have Rosemarie Humphreys has a question.
Good evening, everyone. Hi, Daryl. Yes,
Good
I
evening.
represent, good evening. I represent Krashnik Investments, which is the owner of the properties at 9833 and 9827 Markham Road. And you've got it colored up there really well. Tonight, you're showing the school site, the open water course, a multi-use trail, and a large park on the property. So I'll limit my questions right now to the natural heritage aspect of this, but I did notice when you have this up on the screen here, that the width of the corridor that you're showing running along north-south, I guess, alongside the rail line seems to change as you go, I guess, from north to south. It seems to be quite a bit narrower at the south end of the plan, and then kind of widens out by the Mountjoy GO station area, and then narrows in again north of the school block. Could you explain why that is in fact the case?
Okay, so I will start, and then I'll see if Shonda and Blair can add to this as well. But generally within the demonstration plan, all along that area on the west side of the rail track, we're trying to stay within the 30 meter. So there's a 30 meter buffer that sits on either side of rail tracks where you're not allowed to have buildings and structures. So in some instances, there's some parking, but there is no built structures. So we're trying to fit within that. And that actually may be just a bit of an oversight in the draft demonstration plan, but generally it's fitting itself within that 30 meter buffer. And it should be generally fitting along all of the way down.
Okay, because on your plan here, it looks wider sort of to the north end of the plan. Yeah, even on here, what she just put up on the screen, it seems to be wider up, I guess, by the Krashnik Park property area, and then more narrow as you go south again. So there seems to be some issue with that. The other thing, Daryl, I wanted to clarify with you or your staff is you indicated that you can't put any buildings within the 30 meter buffer. I'm going to raise that question with you, and we will have more correspondence as the process goes on, but I think you are allowed to put buildings within the 30 meter buffer, provided that you have the appropriate noise and safety mitigation So I don't think you should be treating the buffer as a no build zone per se.
So I would actually ask, we have a representative from HDR that has actually been providing information regarding this. Would you be able to weigh in on this, please?
Hi, Daryl. So Jonathan Chai from HDR here. I am the transportation planning expert on the team. We have been getting input from our rail team as well on this. The direction I've been told is that we should be, I guess, planning for that 30-meter setback at a starting point. I think that there could be further discussions with railway managers that could be had. So that's something that perhaps we can explore further if there's a desire.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Yes, so Rosemary, we can look into that further, and I look forward to having further conversations with you.
Thank you.
Okay, I see Councillor Ray has a question.
And
Thanks,
Daryl,
Daryl.
sorry, Councillor Ray, just obviously things are different on different devices, but it looks like if you're looking for that raised hand feature, it's under the More tab and on an iPad, and if you're on a computer, and I don't know whether it's different on different computers, but the raise hand function is actually at the bottom of the participants list, just in case people are looking for it.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Daryl, I'm not sure if it's a silly question. Like Metrolinx is looking at electrification down the road, and I've heard some stories on what will happen. Will that have an effect having a trail system right next? Like, do they build brick walls? Is it tons and tons of hydro lines? Like, what happens when it's electrified?
So with that, I'd like to ask Jonathan to sort of weigh in, as well as we have our transportation staff as well.
Daryl, so as part of our prep for this work, we did review Metrolinx's Stouffville Go Corridor environmental assessment for the RER program. It does identify some infrastructure along the corridor off the top of my head, and it does include additional track in the southern end of the study corridor. So generally speaking, a lot of the improvements would be within that 30-meter buffer. So those are the kinds of considerations that I think are important when we're considering the infrastructure that's needed in that 30-meter buffer.
So if Go wants to expand within that 30-meter buffer, we don't, like, that could depend on whether they wanted to use a couple of meters or a lot of it. That could impact that significantly.
Yeah, to some degree, that 30-meter buffer is there for the railway corridor authority to plan for any improvements or to protect for any improvements that are needed to support their operations. So that's why it's there. But through further discussions, there may be opportunities to put things in there if necessary.
Okay, and I got a text from a resident, and I might have missed it. Are we looking at piping the river and creek and burying it? Is that her understanding?
So in the proposal, Councillor, if you go back to Markham Road, just on the east side of Markham Road, where you can see the creek coming down along there, that is all open channel. Right. Then, as you can see, those 4 dashed lines, the proposal is to pipe that piece to go east.
Right.
And that's to accommodate proposed development and other applications. And then it is proposed to be open channel all of the way south from that point.
So it's just the one section.
Correct. So it's actually improving the natural condition from where it currently is, where we have a larger pipe solution currently in existence.
Okay, so that's open channel, but that's also where the 30-meter buffer is, and that's also where the trail system is supposed to be. Am I understanding that correctly then now?
Correct. It is, the whole point of this is to create a nicer natural environment,
Right.
as well as having active transportation options to allow people along that spine to walk north, south, connect with the Mount Joy GO station, connect north up to the potential Major Mac GO station, and then also have east-westerly connections to get into the adjacent community, as well as also onto the east side to get into the Mount Joy Community Center as well.
Okay. If that woodlot is in my ward, it's the one that's south of Burr Oak, the one that's behind the condo buildings. You can't do anything in the woodlot. It's the woodlot, and there's a small
Correct.
park there, but that is for the residents that live in the 2 Green Park buildings, Flatto, Pace, and Aspen Ridge. That park is probably not adequate for those people. So we need to make sure that there is enough open spaces, especially during COVID. It's taught us that we need more open spaces. People are walking the streets everywhere. There has to be more trails, more connections, and more space for people to move around in. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I see we have Jackie. You have a question?
Yes, I do. I have a couple of questions, and just sort of piggybacking on Karen's comment about the east side, looking at the east side of Markham Road. And probably I missed it in the 3D presentation, but the green space will be important to be on that side as well. If we're building this community, we, the first couple of sessions talked about a live, work, and shop format for it, plan for it. And I'm getting a little concerned because I'm seeing a lot of building of large buildings like condos. And I guess through this meeting tonight, we're going to have a clearer identification of those green spaces on the east side. And I agree that the woodlot, being able to move through it would be nice, but we do need green spaces on both sides. And I'm now trying to find where the shopping is going to be. Currently, there's lots of shopping available to people, and particularly if you're going to have a high density north of 16th Avenue, we're going to have to provide for that. So obviously, this is only at the beginning of the presentation tonight, so hopefully those concerns will be clarified.
Yes, and those are excellent questions and comments, Jackie. We are actually going to be going through functional themes, and we are going to get to one specifically around land use, looking at where the retail is, where the mixed use is, where the concentration of the different areas are. So we will actually be putting up another map just like this, but dealing with the actual functional of the land use. And that's where we can have some really good conversation talking about those exact issues.
Right, and I just again highlighting the as Karen did, the woodlot and any green space and more would be important. Yeah, thank you.
Perfect, thank you. I see we have, actually, first of all, I'd like to acknowledge that Regional Councillor Joe Lee has joined the meeting tonight as well. And I would also now like to ask Regional Councillor Jones, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, the 30 meters, is that 30 meters on either side of the track?
Jonathan from HDR, is it 30 on either side? I believe it is.
Yes, Daryl, that is my understanding. 30 meters on either side.
And what do we have there? One track or two tracks?
Do we have somebody from transportation? Is Henry or Joseph? At this time, I believe it's a single track, but I believe it is going to be twinned. But I'd like our transportation folk to weigh in.
Daryl, if I could take that, yeah, it's single track. There's a plan to add a second track as per the Stouffville GO Corridor EA for Regional Express Rail by Metrolinx. To add a second track towards the southern end of the study area. So the second track, I believe, would cross 16th Avenue, extend up towards Mount Joy GO Station, I believe.
The map you got up there, okay, the outline of how many acres is that?
Sorry, Regional Councillor Jones, could you please repeat that?
The outline of the map, okay. It'd be nice if they could really enlarge it because I can't read a damn thing on it, okay? You know, you got some table you're on, and the table is 80% the table, 85%, and 15% is the picture. That'd be nice if you could enlarge it so we could read what's on there. But I'm saying is that the outline of that, the corridor study, the outline you have there, how many acres is it?
Shonda or Blair, did you want to start this one, please?
Just to clarify, the question is how large is the study area for the secondary plan?
Well, the map you got there, how many acres is it? Major Mac, 16th.
Yeah.
I guess it's the railroad tracks on the east and
Right.
whatever is on the west. How many?
It's I'd have to do a bit of a conversion, but
So
it's about 90 hectares of land, I believe.
So
Is
it's
that
about
correct?
250. Yeah, 240 or something, 235. And in the 3D modeling that you showed there, how many square feet of retail, how many square feet of office, how many and how many residential units?
Blair?
They're like, I can look at this, but I need to pull up the yields I don't have in front of me. It may take a minute or two. I'm not sure if anyone has them.
How many acres of parkland?
7.2 approximately acres of parkland.
7.2?
7.2 acres of parkland. That does not include features. That is just parkland proposed.
So when the stream goes through the center, that's not considered parkland, correct?
No, the stream is not considered parkland. It has to be tableland that is programmable for parks.
So in that acreage, I guess we're including Home Depot and all that stuff on the west side, correct?
Correct. Home Depot, if you, on the map that's shown here, you can see the green park on the west side, up by Castlemore, just on the north side of that, and that in that area just north of there.
Daryl, repeat again, how many hectares was it again?
Total hectares of this secondary plan area is approximately 93 hectares. We are looking 7.6. Is it 7.6 or 7.3? Can I have someone from Parks or Lily? Can you please confirm that? Lily? I know it's approximately, it's either 7.3 or 7.6. I'd have to grab my calculator out and look at the actual demo plan.
So Daryl, the parking lot of Go on the east side of the tracks, what's that classified at? In this study, is it classified as parkland?
No, it's an area to be considered for a transit-oriented community redevelopment. It was a late addition in our draft demonstration plan. The earlier work that was done and where we started this project back in 2019, the study area actually ends right at the rail track and doesn't include anything east of the rail track. However, through the subsequent work, as well as feedback that we received through the design charrette, it really made us start thinking the fact that if we're looking at transit-oriented communities redevelopment of the Mount Joy GO Station site, we should also be thinking about that large parking lot that's sitting there as well. So there is opportunity for us to think about a larger redevelopment plan with that site as well.
And
Daryl, just to go back to the size of the public parks, it's 7.2 hectares.
Okay.
Thank you.
The school, is that a single-story building or is it a multi-story building? And what is the size of the school site? Counting the school.
Blair, what is the size of that site? Was it 3.2?
I believe so.
That's counting. Is that counting the school, the building, or is that just the parkland with the school?
That's just the school. The parkland is completely different. It's on the west side of Anderson.
But do you know how many acres is the school and the school lands around it? How many acres are they taking? What's the footprint of the school? Not the building, just the whole parcel.
So the parcel of the school, as I said, is 3.2. the park site on the west side. Could I ask somebody that has the demonstration plan up outside of this view? Because I know the size is actually listed right on it.
No, but
It
Daryl,
is, it's slide 33, Blair. I know we're jumping quite a bit ahead. But the school, I'll just tell you, it's a 4-acre school site.
and
That's
that-
planned to be vertically integrated with a private development next to about a 1.5 to 2 hectare public park.
so that's
across
a
the corridor.
4-acre school site, including building, correct?
Yeah,
That's
and
right.
it's assuming a vertically stacked, I believe, 3-story school. Is my
Okay.
understanding.
Okay. That's all for a while. It'd
Okay.
be nice if you could make your picture bigger. So
Yes, we've passed that on. What we're going to try and do is between the next few slides that we go through on this deck, we'll be looking to see if we can make the camera zoom in a little bit closer for everybody. I know I've kind of been squinting with my eyes a bit, so we'll get to that. But otherwise, I do see that we have one other question. Gabe, do you have a question or a
Yes.
comment?
Yeah. Good evening, everybody. Can you see me and can you hear me?
Definitely. Good
Great.
evening.
Good evening, Daryl. Good to see you again. Good evening, Mayor Scarpitti and members of the committee and the city's consultant team. I'm the Senior Vice President of Trinity Point Developments. We own 9335 and 9331 Markham Road on the east side, directly across from Edward Jeffries. We've had an application in for a couple of years and we've been participating through the process. I just wanted to have hear some comments from staff or from the consultant team. You're showing the extension of Edward Jeffrey and then a proposed pedestrian walkover over the rail line to connect the Mountjoy secondary plan area and the broader community over to allow them to access the Mountjoy Park. And the location, I guess, although conceptual, it doesn't seem, the pedestrian walkover doesn't seem to be aligned with the Edward Jeffries connection. I just thought, that might be a logical place for it. So have you had any discussions at all with Metrolinx in terms of the location of the pedestrian crossover and the timing as to which such of a crossover might be affected? Thank you.
So I think the first part of the question in response to that, no, at this point, we've been working closely with Metrolinx. They've been sitting down with us. They will be commenting on this. They've been circulated on all of the work as well. They've provided some initial comments, but we haven't gotten into that exact level of detail about where those would be aligned. In this draft demonstration plan, these are shown conceptual for those linkages and crossings because further work would be necessary in order to better understand. Well, actually, we have some slides going further into the deck to sort of talk about that a little bit further. So as we get there, you'll sort of see some of the conversations because we're looking at design, we're looking at some imagery, we're looking at ideas, but we haven't gotten into the very detailed elements of, is it a little bit further north, a little bit further south yet? So, but if you have ideas or suggestions about where you think those linkages would make sense, we really love to hear that.
Yeah, if I may, I mean, we'll continue to follow up through the process, but I guess just as we look at our emerging development plans and our revisions with the acquisition of the southerly property that would affect the extension of Edward Jeffries, we just thought, that it might make sense to perfectly alignment, kind of as a grand alley that it guides you to the walkover, to have somebody on Markham Road who may not know in the fullness time that the pedestrian crossover is there, to have it right at the extension of or the intersection of the Edward Jeffries extension and that new north-south road might be a logical point. Having said that, we don't know what the requirements are for Metrolinx in the city on the park side and the landing side. There is a soccer pitch right there, so we were just curious about what level of conversation with Metrolinx. And you're right, Daryl, with the twinning the track, the span's going to get a lot bigger. So I said I guess we'll find out more information as we go further along with the study. So I appreciate the answers and the ability to comment. Thank you.
Perfect. So I think we've gone through the questions at this point. So Blair, back to you to continue through the presentation. Oh, sorry, I apologize. Regional Councillor Jones.
Yes, Daryl, where is the community center and where is the library? Or does this site even generate a community center and a library?
This site does not generate a community center. The community center, the Mountjoy Community Center, is just on this map. You can see, yeah, right there. Thank you. Well, a little, yeah, kind of in that area. It's actually that southeast of that piece. Yes. So that's the Mountjoy Community Center. There is not a generation for, as we've been talking with our operations people, around having a library. We do know the integrated leisure master plan does speak to having a library located somewhere in East Markham, but that site has not been confirmed at this point.
And Daryl, I asked a question, I still don't get the answer. How much retail, how much office, and how much residential is in this plan? You must know.
Okay, so I'm not sure, Blair, have you had a chance to pull up some of that information? So as we mentioned back in December, as well as in our recent visit to Development Services Committee, we are still looking through the specific elements and the right mix. This current draft demonstration plan has quite a bit of mixed use. So we're actually going back to the drawing board a little bit in order to reduce the amount of mixed use, because realistically, the office is going to be mainly functionally located on that Mount Joy GO Station site. So within that, that is where the core element of our jobs are. Realistically, we're looking at approximately 8,000 to 9,000 jobs and about 18,000 population for this entire secondary plan. It's going to be somewhere around that range, but we're continuing to still refine and look at this area in more detail. As we'd mentioned back in December, I think it was a question actually from you about the linkages with FSI. So that's some of the work that we've been doing in order to ground truth this a little bit further.
Just refresh me, the Mount Joy Community Center, what is there? I know there's one arena, and what else is there? I haven't been there in a long time.
So as I
One
recall,
arena and one indoor soccer pitch.
Because what we should be trying to do is, you know, where the Metrolinx thing on the east side of the track, we should be incorporating that as a community center located around the train station.
Oh, and that's a good idea. As we'd indicated, we'll have to look into that. We'd only shown as an outline. It was a recent addition when we were having those conversations about a TOC development, trying to figure out the amount of development that's going to be needed for a private developer or somebody else to come in to redevelop that site. And it's relatively new for us, trying to think, what do you do with that, essentially a flat parking lot? So happy to hear that idea. We can look at that. And of course, we'll want to look at how it all fits together with the rest of the site as well.
Because I think the Mount Joy is kind of not in the center of focus on the plan for 20,000 people. But anyway, you look at it. That's all I'm asking.
No, we will. Thank you. Okay, so with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Blair if you want to continue moving through the presentation, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so the next theme that we're going to take a look at is public realm and open space. So the draft demonstration plan incorporates a hierarchy of public realm and open space features. These include 7 new parks and a system of privately owned, publicly accessible open spaces, which will be distributed throughout the secondary plan area. You can see them here sort of spread out throughout the course of the secondary plan area. It also includes a network of green streets and pedestrian connections, as well as mid-block linkages between buildings. In addition to 2 pedestrian bridges or tunnels, which were discussed earlier, a protected cycling facilities along Markham Road and other streets, as well as just discussed, a 2.5 kilometer multi-use pathway along the length of the Stouffville GO rail corridor. Collectively, these elements will provide the fine-grained connectivity and the active transportation infrastructure, which we feel is critical for the sustained growth of the secondary plan area. So for ease of reference and consideration in advance of, again, the next sort of upcoming poll and discussion, this slide quickly summarizes key policy directions with respect to parks, open spaces, and multi-use pathways. So Markham Road is anticipated to transform into what we hope is a vibrant mixed-use Main Street. Its detailed redesign and redevelopment between Major Mackenzie Drive East to the north and 16th Avenue to the south will be subject to a municipal class environmental assessment process. Implementation of improvements along the length of Markham Road will be achieved through development charges or capital investments, some combination of the two potentially, although streetscape improvements could also be realized on a site-specific basis through the phasing of private land developments. So the previous slide just sort of showed a view of Markham Road adjacent to the easement as it existed today. And here we're layering on top a simple cross section on top of an image of the roadway. So you can really just sort of get a sense of the location, the sizing, and the various elements that comprise that right of way and that streetscape. So this is an existing cross section of a typical sort of section of Markham Road here. Markham Road is anticipated to maintain generally a minimum 36-meter right-of-way width between Major Mackenzie Drive East and Edward Jeffreys Drive. As it approaches 16th Avenue, the right-of-way is actually anticipated to taper slightly in order to establish a transition between the secondary plan area and the Markham Village area to the south. Generally speaking, it's recommended that Markham Road include protected cycling infrastructure and facilities, sidewalks, landscaping and street furnishings, a central median and turning lane, and a maximum of 4 travel lanes, including 2 in each direction. Adjacent to the public right-of-way, abutting developments are recommended to incorporate setbacks to accommodate for flexible spillover spaces that could be used for outdoor retail sales or other sort of transitional uses between the face of the building and the public right-of-way, while framing the street and establishing an appropriate sense of scale and enclosure. Where it's possible to do so, the hope would be that properties along the west side of Markham Road should utilize the existing 10-meter easement that exists there for these purposes specifically. Again, for ease of reference and in consideration of the discussion that's about to follow, this slide quickly just sort of summarizes some of the key policy directions we've established regarding the broader street network and Markham Road specifically. And additionally, this slide summarizes some key policy directions regarding green streets and pedestrian connections specifically. So again, this is what we've heard to date. Through tonight's discussion, we're hoping to determine, if we got this right, have we missed anything? What else should we explore further? We're really hoping to get your feedback. So with that, I will hand it back over to Shonda, who's going to lead a polling exercise and then open a discussion.
Thanks,
Shonda.
Blair. And you have such a great ability to focus. I know that your hands are full with your daughter in the background there. So thanks so much for that. Okay, well, we've got a few questions here now on this public realm and open space section. We'll start actually with a poll, and we're going to have available poll question number 1, which is, should the number of lanes on Markham Road be reduced to encourage slower speeds and support the development of a main street? And we're getting some pretty quick answers here so far. Interesting. So an interesting split here. Lily, should we give it a bit more time? I guess we've got 30 more seconds or so, do we?
We'll give it a few more seconds.
A little bit. Thank you.
Okay, there doesn't seem to be any change.
I wonder if I might clarify, because I wonder if there might be confusion when we talk about the number of lanes reduced to encourage slower speeds. We actually, Blair, we're meaning the reduction of the lanes as a whole, right? Or are we talking about the size of the lanes, the width of the lanes?
This might be something actually that Jonathan Chai might be able to assist with. We're looking at limiting the number of lanes in general, but we're also, I believe, looking at opportunities to narrow potentially the width of the lanes as well.
Yeah, to clarify, it could be both. Going from today, it's 2 lanes per direction. The question is more towards, should they be reduced to 1 lane per direction, as is the case south of 16th Avenue or south of Bullock, I think.
So with that clarification, I know that kind of came after the poll just closed here. Obviously, we had some mixed responses with people tilting towards no, but I wondered if that was thinking just about that first option, about just reduction of a lane as a whole versus also just thinking about refining the widths of them, which we know through our work, right, has actually proven to slow traffic down a little bit as well.
Well, Shauna, is there any consideration putting parking on the street?
That's a good question, Councillor. If we could, Blair, maybe while we're answering it, go back to the cross section that you showed, because I think that would be helpful about what we're kind of considering here. And I know, Councillor, that's something that we did talk about, is the opportunity to accommodate parking. Jonathan, I wonder, do you want to take that question? And the ability for us to be able to accommodate that here?
Yeah, so I think it's a valid question, and that's something that we intend to explore, whether or not that extra curb lane could be reallocated to other uses. Parking could be one, transit priority lanes could be another one, dedicated nice wide cycling facility could be another use. So these are the options that I think we want to explore with council and with the general public to see what the right use of that space could be.
Well, I go south of 16th and on Main Street, Markham, I have parking. So why would this be different?
It's a really good segue actually to our next question. And I'd be curious to hear thoughts of the group as well, which is, what are the elements that you think should be prioritized within the Markham Road cross section? We know that we've got a varying rate of way across its length, but it is limited in terms of what we can accommodate there. And you can see through our demonstration cross section that we think that there's an ability to accommodate a number of different uses. But what elements do you feel should be prioritized along Markham Road? Would that be more pedestrian infrastructure and flexible space, protected bicycle infrastructure on both sides of Markham Road? So by protected, we mean raised up from the roadway and buffered in that way from vehicles, but also similarly buffered from the sidewalk. Improved public transit infrastructure, maintaining private vehicle infrastructure, which could also include some street parking, other, or you're not sure. So interesting that we're seeing kind of a desire for a number of the different elements. So far, a good majority of folks asking for more pedestrian infrastructure and flexible space. I mean, we know we're trying to also set up conditions for more growth over time in this particular area. And that showed up as the majority, but also, as we can see here, a really strong preference also for protected bicycle infrastructure, 42% of respondents stating that, and also 50% maintaining the private vehicle infrastructure. So it's sounding like a balance between all of these elements. And interestingly enough, a good quarter of folks asking for improved public transit infrastructure. Great. So certainly more to come on Markham Road, because certainly beyond the secondary plan, we know that there would be further study and analysis, and also design thinking about how we actually realize Markham Road as a new street to really serve the community. Thanks, everybody. Maybe we can now open it up to just a few more questions here. I'm just trying to open up my Word document, but it's stuck. So I'll look here.
Perfect. So I see in our list, we have Councillor Ray has a question or comment.
Thank you. On the drawing for the cross section, are they, like right now you have that big median in the middle of Markham Road, that I'm presuming is going to come out? The existing median that's in Markham Road?
Jonathan, could you take that question? Talk about what that means, what the redesign of Markham Road might mean for the medians?
Well, I think we haven't gotten there yet in terms of whether or not a median should come out. I think we first want to start with how we want to best allocate the space within the public right of way. And the previous exercise spoke to that exactly. I can probably say that there will be a need for dedicated turning lanes, and often medians can help accommodate turning, like left turn lanes, for example, to provide safe access to adjacent roadways. But the design of the street, I think, is something that we would consider later on, or as we detail out the recommendations of this study. So it's something that we can consider, whether or not a median is there.
Okay, and I've brought this up before about my area, which is south of 16th. I'm working on a motion, if I can get 5 minutes of peace, to bring back the vision from Bullock Drive to 16th, and the residents want that taken down to one lane north and south. They do not want to maintain two north and southbound lanes. So I know you mentioned south of Bullock, it was one lane each way. The residents would probably prefer it to be one lane either way, south of 16th Avenue. And then the last question I have is, I asked a few meetings ago what the width of Niagara on the Lake was through their main street, because they have on-street parking, they have 2 lanes, and they have a median full of flowers. That is a nice street. If we're going to keep Markham Road as the 2 lanes and 2 lanes, and we've got the median that's got nothing but weeds and trees in it, that is not a pretty street, and no one slows down to pay attention. If it's a pretty street, for lack of a better word, people will slow down. But I asked how wide Niagara was, and I don't think anybody got back on that.
Okay, I apologize, Councillor Ray.
No, that's okay.
I think what we'll start is Lloyd Chi, Acting Director of Transportation, is here. And he can start with your first question about as you're working towards your motion for the land south of 16th. And
I
as we're
think
doing that,
think staff are working on it behind the scenes, I got told, but I might not need the motion, but I'm going to try and put it together.
okay, so I'd ask Lloyd, can you provide a response on this, please?
Yes, thanks, Daryl. Councillor Ray, you're right. We are we are working behind the scenes, and I think we've spoken to you before about, or conversed with you before about what you're trying to achieve here, and we will be meeting with you shortly to talk further about it. So we'll get there together, I guess.
Okay.
And while we're doing this, we're just looking into the width on the Niagara on the Lake. Councillor Ray, I may have to get back to you after this meeting.
No, that's fine. But that's fairly wide, because it's got 2 lanes on either side. I mean, Regional Councillor Jones would know better, but it's got 2 lanes. It's got on-street parking, and it has the median in the middle full of flowers, right? That is a nice street, and you don't see anybody speeding up on Niagara on the Lake.
Yes, it is a very nice area. And of course, what we're trying to achieve in this area along Markham Road is to change that environment, create that main street type of feel. So of course, let us look into that, and I will get back to you, Councillor Ray, regarding your question about the width.
Daryl, I actually have a bit of an estimate on that. So, Councillor, we're speaking about Queen Street, correct? Queen Street, that main commercial strip through Niagara on the Lake?
Yes.
And
where all the restaurants, the patios are.
Right. It's generally a 1 lane in each direction for vehicles. And then, of course, the sidewalks, where predominantly the trees are located on one side of the street, but that does vary. There are trees sometimes on both sides of the street. There is also a bit of a widening as, of course, you're heading to the intersections for dedicated left turn lanes. And just by doing a bit of a scale comparison here, it's looking at approximately just under 20 meters.
And what are we looking at, 36?
We're quite a bit wider of a right of way. That's right.
Like, that's not pedestrian friendly. Like, if you're saying it's double to the width of Niagara on Lake, that's not pedestrian friendly. Like, who wants to walk up and down a highway? Like, who wants to walk up and down Highway 7? Like, let's get real here.
If I could ask Blair to, I'm sorry for the switching of the screens here, but Blair, if you could go back to that cross section, I think that might help us to look at that as we're looking at how we looked at allocating space within that right of way. Thanks, Blair. And so I certainly And maybe Blair, you can share this when you have a moment. We do know that the right-of-way does vary along the length of Markham Road. Here you're seeing where space has been shared between both the boulevard sections, meaning the sidewalk and the protected cycling and the planted components, as well as the roadway piece. And then beyond that, further augmenting the boulevard with building setbacks for spill out space, either by retail or other commercial uses, etc. So happy to take your feedback on this. It was interesting to note the various kinds of comments we were getting from, at least from this group here today, where we had a bit of a split about that one question we asked earlier about should lanes be reduced. Daryl, did you want to take other questions, or?
Yes, I was going to suggest, I was just doing a bit of a time check, and I see we're sitting at 5 to 8, and I also want to make sure that we can get everyone out on time tonight. So I do see we have a few more questions up. I see Gabe, you have a question?
Yes, I do. Thanks, Daryl. The question's for Jonathan. Two-part question. I can't remember the width of the proposed north-south road along the rail line, and I guess does that width will it be dependent on what happens with Markham Road, i.e., if the cross section maintains the way it is now with 2 travel lanes in each direction, or if lanes are reduced, and if the road is fixed? This cross section is a great way to illustrate to everybody, but I don't recall seeing a cross section for that new north-south road. And when you start talking about a traveled road, a multi-path, the multi-use pathway, and potentially some berming or crash wall next to the rail line, I'm just wondering, it would be beneficial for landowners like us who abut that area to see what this cross section would look like. Is that something that'll be produced before the study goes back to council for endorsement?
Hi, Gabe. Thanks for your question. So with respect to the road along the rail line that you mentioned, towards the southern end of the secondary plan area, correct? Connecting to 16th Avenue. Generally speaking, I think Blair mentioned this when he was giving an overview of the demonstration plan, but the general thinking is that that road would really be, we would recognize that would be quite a narrow road, and it would be intended to provide more so provide access than be a through street. So to that regard, I think Blair had mentioned that'd be envisioned as more of a local street. And we're going to get more into the details of the modeling of this area in terms of traffic movements and all that kind of stuff following this meeting to inform the recommendations of the secondary plan. So we'll be exploring that further and further developing the cross section of that street as well. So to your second question, you're correct. Yeah, we would be exploring what that street would look like before it goes to council again.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, and I see that we have Regional Councillor Jones has a question or comment. I think you're muted, Regional Councillor.
Niagara-on-the-Lake is about 60 feet wide down where the restaurants are. And the bell tower is 70 feet, and down by the Prince of Wales, there's too many trees in the way to be able to measure. It's well treed. My question really is, are we considering autonomous vehicles here, like mini buses? Are we going to plan for that in here? That's what we should be planning for at every station. So maybe I don't necessarily have a road, but I might have a pathway that they can go throughout this place.
Okay, and I think I'd like to start off with Loy Chi. Would you like to respond to this, please?
Yes, Regional Councillor Jones. With regard to autonomous vehicles, I think there's certainly a possibility that that type of technology and service could have a role to play in access and egress from the both stations. for instance.
Not,
But as-
not only the GO stations that could get you around, to shopping and things like that. They are doing a pilot, Metrolinx and the TTC, at the Rouge Hill GO station, trying to get more ridership to the GO station. But I think we should take it further than just going to the GO station. It should be reducing the cars and trying to motor around with autonomous vehicles. I mean, this is looking to the future. This is not looking to today or yesterday. There's a lot of pilots going on all over the place. I won't say in Canada, but all over the US and Europe. There's a lot of pilots of mini buses that are going on.
Yes, we are aware of that, Regional Councillor Jones. And we are monitoring all of those, or at least some of those pilots anyway, that are happening closer to home in Canada. And for now, as far as we are aware, most of them are related to essentially extensions of rapid transit services. They tend to be used for access.
What's your first and last mile strategy? Okay. The other thing that I'm going to go for my good friend Joe Lee. One is there a plan for having district energy here in a central garbage system?
So in response to that, Regional Councillor Jones, that's something that we're going to have to think about and consider how that works. At this point, we haven't really looked at district energy for this area, but it is something that we will be thinking about. And for Regional Councillor Jolie, of course, that is something that we're going to look at to see how that could work. We're still in early stages looking at this, but that type of thing would come out through some of the secondary plan policy work that would also be coming out following this study as well.
So Daryl, in my thinking, that should be focused, filtering out from the GO station, like the sort of the headquarters is the GO station for this, or close proximity of the GO station, both for NVAC and also district energy. Then we should be working those systems into the system and also into your road system, so that we know how we're going to put the pipes in it, etc. But anyway, that's some more things to include in there.
No, thank you for that. And actually, as you'll see, as we get further into the deck, you're going to see some specific slides as we start talking about the land use elements, where it talks about the precincts and hitting right on the point you're raising. Core focal point of this as a catalyst is the redevelopment of the Mountjoy GO station. That really needs to be a priority. And that's where, as you rightfully said, we need to think about how it links with all of those pieces moving out and throughout the rest of the secondary plan.
Well, Daryl, you have 14 acres of parking lot there by GO. So if we're going to put buildings on there, how are you going to get people around? Okay, are you going to park them, or are we going to get them there a different way? So there's some challenges here.
And that's why we need to look at modal shift and changing modes, so that way we get people using different modes of transportation, shifting those north to the potential major MAC GO station, getting that landed, so that way we can actually achieve some of those things. It'll also be working with Metrolinx, so we can reduce the number of parking spaces that would be required at the Mountjoy GO station. So lots of things that we need to think about around that site. So lots of complex threads that we need to sort of work through. So we'll take all of those back, and as we continue sort of thinking about that broad site and what we need to do with it.
And one last thing, Daryl, because the mayor, myself, and Joe Lee, we went a couple of years ago to Battery Park, and I think I'm not overly happy where you're putting the school site, but I think it should be multi-level. There should be a library built into it, maybe some community center facilities for the residents too. And so the school should be maybe 8 stories instead of the 2 or 3 stories that you're planning. And I'm not sure that it's in the right place.
No, thank you. Thank you for those comments. In the school design, it actually is looking at a multi-use complex. It's one of the things that we're still trying to figure out, what is the right recipe for the types of uses on that site. One of the other things we've been trying to think about is the correlation with the park, because we want to keep that as close to site as possible and maximize that space. So lots of thinking sort of going into that. So thank you for those comments.
Okay, you're welcome.
I see that we also have Jackie. You have a question or comment?
Yes, thank you very much. Again, I'm just going to go back to the hopefulness that I felt when we started the first and second information sharing sessions, and that was that this was going to be a dynamic, livable area of Markham where people could walk, pedestrian friendly, people could walk to. There was talk at the other sessions of a community center, which Jim is pointing to, so that people could actually walk to a store. And certainly, you know, 21st century, we're trying to make communities walkable. And you're going to get to it, I guess, but I'm still a little nervous here because I'm seeing all sorts of discussion about buildings and not as much parkland as I thought would be in here. So hopefully we're going to get to see that this is going to be a living, breathing, walkable community, and community needs to have that kind of infrastructure, shopping available, pharmacies available, easily walkable, and safety was another issue that was brought up at the other two meetings. How are people going to get and navigate over Markham Road, and how are we going to bring it to life in what Karen's talking about too, which is a really beautiful, dynamic, livable stretch of our wonderful city. So I'm waiting. Thank you.
No, thank you for those comments. That is one of the core principles of what we were trying to achieve. When we talked about the vision and principles of this draft demonstration plan at previous meetings, the walkability, the transit oriented, having that vibrancy, having the Main Street feel going up and down Markham Road, having those connections east, west, north, south, those are all core components of it. And that's where you've seen in previous slides talking about the spine of a walkable space, walking on either side of the CN tracks, trying to get east-west connections. We're trying to look at some of those local streets and how we can have those. There's a pathway sitting south of Castlemore that goes east-west. There's a lot of different elements that we're looking at. And it's one of those things that when we look at the draft demonstration plan, that's where I'd like, as we sort of go through the rest of these themes, you'll see some of those pieces get teased out even further, but would really love to hear your feedback on this. As I've said at the beginning of this meeting, all of this material, including today's deck, it's going to be loaded up on our Your Voice Markham page. We have all of the draft demonstration plan. Everything is actually already there. So I encourage any of the participants today and those that are joining us through the live stream, if you have ideas about where you see some connections, where you're thinking we should be focusing some of our energy about, whether it's green space, connections, all of these themes that we're going through, please download a copy if you want, even print it out, mark it up, scan it, email it to me. We'll have our information on the back end of this presentation. And then also you have all of our contact information right on our Your Voice Markham page. We really want to hear your feedback. We want to make sure that this hits the right tone, addresses all of the different elements we want to see currently as well as into the future for this area as part of the secondary plan process. So with this, I do want to say we have a few more questions, but we're really running tight on time. We're only about halfway through this presentation. So what I would like to ask is, if it's possible, Peter, I'd like to ask if you could ask your question. Hopefully it's a quick one. And then
yes, it's very quick. In fact, it's only a comment. I just wanted to respond to Councillor Ray's point about 36 meters is not pedestrian friendly. I think it depends on the programming that's on that street. I mean, University Avenue is very wide and yet pedestrian friendly. The Champs-Élysées is very wide. You've got a great opportunity here with the 36 meters to do some good things, as you've done, in my opinion.
Thank you, Peter. So I am going to ask, I do see that there were a couple more people, but if you can hold your hands and just leave them there for now, we will come to you as we keep moving through. But I do want to make sure we can get through all of these themes. And if there is anybody that we do not get to through raised hands, please contact me. You'll have our contact information. As I said, Your Voice Markham, please reach out to us. I do want to make sure that we hear everyone's comments. And as I mentioned, all of those polls that we're doing, they're going to be loaded up onto Your Voice Markham and the survey. So please fill that in as well. We want to hear any piece of feedback you have on this draft demonstration plan. So with that, I would appreciate, Blair, can you continue running through this, please?
Absolutely. So the next layer that we're looking at is the street hierarchy. So the draft demonstration plan incorporates what we feel is a fine-grained network of arterial, collector, and local streets that are intended to allow for the redirection of some vehicular movement away from Markham Road to actually facilitate that transition of Markham Road into that vibrant mixed-use Main Street and to sort of slow vehicular movement along it as part of that process. The plan facilitates options for multimodal transportation as well as new frontages and site access. It also promotes logical and direct connections between adjacent blocks. And here's just some quick stats regarding the number of streets. And in the map here, you can sort of see just the dashed lines represent the proposed street connections that are being added to the existing network. Again, for ease of reference and consideration in advance of the upcoming discussion, this slide is intended to just quickly summarize key policy directions as they relate specifically to the street hierarchy. So again, this represents what we've heard to date. We're really curious to know, if we've got it right, if we're missing something. We really value your feedback. So with that, I will hand it back over again to Shonda, who's going to lead us through a quick discussion.
Thanks, Blair. And just as we're switching screens here back to the map with Kim, I wondered if you could use the raised hand feature and just let us know if there are any other kinds of connections that we might have missed in the demonstration plan. And Kim, I think what was really helpful the last time you were drawing when we were on the natural heritage features, just because some of the colors get diluted here, if you could just kind of key in some of the new streets that are being proposed. And if we need to, we could also go back, Blair, I'm thinking, to your map that might actually show the proposed street hierarchy a bit bolder. So any other connections within the secondary plan area that you think would be important to include, and if so, where?
Okay, does anybody have any comments or questions? In some respects, we may have gotten to some of this through the past comments and questions that we were just going through. But as I've indicated before, if you do have any further feedback and you want to think about these questions and comments as we go through, please feel free to reach out to us and share your feedback. All right, so why don't we continue moving forward, please?
Okay, so the next theme that we're going to look at is land use and built form. On this slide, you can see a map indicating with the legend items on the right-hand side the type of land use. So this map is intended just to show the types of different land uses that we're considering and the geographic distribution of those land uses. On the left-hand side, you can see a breakdown of those land uses with some preliminary densities. The FSI stands for floor space index. So that's the ratio of development versus the amount of land on site, and the gross floor area of the types of uses that are anticipated. Again, these are preliminary yields and statistics and subject to further review and evaluation and subject to change. But this is generally what we're looking at. In this map, you can also sort of see what we've identified as primary employment frontages and primary retail frontages as well. So just, I guess, to elaborate, the draft demonstration plan concentrates primary height and density peaks around the existing and potential GO stations at Mount Choy and Major Mackenzie Drive East before transitioning downward along the length of Markham Road, and again downwards towards adjacent and surrounding parts of the secondary plan, as well as adjacent and surrounding neighborhoods and districts. Building heights surrounding the potential Major Mackenzie GO station specifically will be commensurate with and dependent upon the integration of a new GO station in that location. As you can see here on the map, the at-grade retail uses will be prioritized along portions of Markham Road and Minor Collector 6, which is the southern extension of Anderson Avenue, throughout an area that we have referred to as the Mount Joy GO Station mixed-use node. Conversely, employment uses will be prioritized at grade along portions of Anderson Avenue with an area that we have referred to as the mixed-use employment hub. So I will explain and elaborate upon what these terms mean in the following slides. But before I do that, I just wanted to mention that the draft plan incorporates a general estimate and density of land area attributed to each one of these land uses. Again, you can see this on the left-hand side. Again, this is subject to change. And we're really curious to know, as we enter into the discussion very shortly, whether or not you have any specific thoughts about any of this. Have we got it right? Or are we missing anything specifically? And just to the comment about the types of uses that we want to see in our communities that sort of make walkable, complete communities, these mixed use areas and the areas where we identify these primary retail frontages is where we're currently sort of saying this is where we would try to concentrate these sorts of shopping activities specifically. So with that, I will hand the floor back over to Shonda, who will lead us through a poll and discussion.
Thanks, Blair. So to start off, we have actually another poll question, and that's just going to come up on the screen in a moment. And the question is, do you agree with the mix and distribution of land uses and densities in the secondary plan area? Yes, no, I'm not sure, are the possible responses. Great, and we've got our poll results here, fairly mixed, but with the majority going to yes, broad agreement about the mix and distribution of land uses. Although a number of folks that have also said no, there isn't agreement on that front, and then a few others that have said I'm not sure. And so I think it would be great to hear maybe it open up to the floor through a show of hands. If you have any commentary, it might be helpful to hear why you might have answered yes, or maybe even why you've answered no, and that might be helpful for us to kind of tease out the discussion.
Okay, so if anybody, oh, Chris, I see you have a question or comment.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
I had a question about the where the bigger retail that currently exists will be relocated to. Specifically, I see the Home Depot in the model is shown as a park. You got the brick there, PetSmart, Food Basics, those things.
That's a great question. Blair, did you want to take that? And if we need to point at the map a little bit, we can do that as well.
Sure. Okay, I'll take a stab at answering that. And Daryl, Shonda, please feel free to weigh in if you have anything to add, of course. So to your question, sir, I think, and this will be addressed a little bit later in the presentation when we talk about phasing. But generally speaking, the large format retail uses that you're referring to, I think a lot of them exist in this southern portion of the study area on the east side of Markham Road. Ultimately, there is no specific plan to redevelop those sites. Of course, those uses can continue to exist, for as long as there's, as long as there's a sort of a demand for them in those locations. And until such time that development does take place. When development does take place, and there is no specific timeline for that, what we have looked at in this plan is accommodating for the potential inclusion of large format retail and commercial uses into the base of buildings that would eventually redevelop those sites. So when we look at the block structure, the block depths and dimensions, when we look at access configurations of these sites, we have done so with the mindset to allowing for the long-term preservation of those uses and for the eventual inclusion of those uses into the base of larger format buildings. I hope that answers your question.
So even things like the Home Depot and stuff, I mean, those actually places I mentioned are closer to the north part and to the east. There's a large park shown under the number 2 where Home Depot currently exists now. So that is the plan to incorporate that within this subject area still, or are you going to move that out to a different area, like outside of this subject area?
Claire, maybe I could tag on and build on a little bit of what you shared, because I think you raised some really good points. And Chris, I think really that's up to the landowners and the types of tenants that they'll continue to form agreements with and house within the developments. As Blair said, this is really kind of showing a long-term full build-out vision for what might happen beyond 2051, really. So quite a number of years out, and understanding that there's commercial uses that are really important for a community. I think there's every opportunity for those types of uses to continue to function and exist. Interestingly enough, what we're seeing, really across North America, it's not unique to Markham alone, but I think what the opportunity here is when we have investments and we see investments in things like transit infrastructure and new streets and parks and open space, and sites start to infill a bit, is commercial landowners and operators tend to get quite creative with their sites as well. And we're seeing large REITs, for example, redevelop their lands and think about how they can also grow within the communities as they're continuing to evolve, including coming out with smaller format grocery stores, for example, or looking at smaller format what would be big box locations. Not to say that those couldn't continue to exist, but maybe not unlike the way we're contemplating the school as part of a mixed use development. What we're giving permissions for is the opportunity to actually house both large and small scale retail and commercial opportunities across the secondary plan area. So I hope that gives a bit more context, Chris.
It does, thank you. I had one other question as well too about the potential GO station there. I noticed that some of the highest density intensification is in that northeast area near the proposed station. What happens if there is no new station that eventually is built at that location?
So maybe I'll start with that one. So in response to that, that is a really, really good question. It's something that we're turning our minds to, because we need to make sure that this secondary plan is flexible enough to account for the fact of whether there is a GO station at the potential major MAC GO station area or not. So within the draft demonstration plan, it actually does indicate a range of different heights. And that's something that we're continuing to refine and look at in order to figure out what is a framework if there isn't a station and what is the framework if there is a station. So that's something that we'll continue to sort of work on. And that's where you'll see that detailed out further as we develop the secondary plan itself in order to figure out how those moving parts fit together.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, I see that Regional Councillor Jones has a question.
Are land ownership, was the land ownership of people involved in this plan? Okay, all the landowners. And then secondly, is the plan based on land ownership or is it based on property lines and property lines? Or is the plan based on what is best and doesn't consider ownership or property lines?
I would suggest, just to start that off, and just given the sense of time to sort of move this forward, that this draft demonstration plan takes into account approved developments that are within the area. It accounts for existing developments that are already there. It looks at developments and considers the ones that are in process, that our development team is processing. It also looks at redevelopment elements right across broader areas, as we were just talking about the area shown as Area 2 and what that development and redevelopment could look like. So it isn't fully focused only on property lines. It does account for a variety of different things.
And Daryl, a lot of the land that is on the west side of 48 is the DG group. Has the DG group been involved in this planning process?
So we have met with pretty well all of the developers, the larger developers within this area. We're actually arranging another meeting with them now in order to get that another feedback loop, to get feedback directly from them on this plan. So we have met with I believe, all of the groups. Lily, can you please advise? I believe that we have met with DG Group as part of this, as I recall in our last round of developer meetings.
I'm not familiar with the name DG Group. Do they have another name they go by?
Metris.
Aspen Ridge?
Yeah, Aspen Ridge is.
Yes, we have met with them and we are meeting with them again.
But the DG Group, I think, own Home Depot and all those buildings, okay? Aspen Ridge might be more focused on the condo buildings.
Okay.
So
Okay,
is
we'll
there
look into that.
anticipated there's going to be a developers group agreement here?
For this type of secondary plan to succeed, we do need to have a landowners group formed. There's a lot of smaller pieces of property fabric in this area. I think for this to occur, we do need to see a landowners group. That would be a secondary plan policy that could be coming forward. It also is actually a draft recommendation within the interim report.
Thank you.
Okay, I see that Ward 7, Councillor Usman has joined as well and also has a question. Welcome, Councillor.
Well, thank you. Let me turn my mic on, Daryl. I know I'm a little late because I was in another meeting, but I understand, we were talking about, the channel that you are proposing near the mosque. Can you bring that up? Because I understand you're proposing an open channel as opposed to piping the water.
Yes, so Councillor, in response to that, on this map, Kim or whoever has the mouse, it's immediately south of the 5. That is the mosque site in pink. And the open channel is on the east side. And interestingly, we have received correspondence from the mosque indicating that they're supportive of the open channel in that location.
They are? That's not what they told me. Because do they realize you're taking away the land for the open channel?
Well, within the land, it's within the 30-meter buffer where you can't have structures. They have a little bit of parking sitting there. That's something that I guess we'll have to have some further correspondence on. And let's have a conversation about that, Councillor Usman, because as I said, we have received some.
I think before it's all cast in stone, I think we need to talk about this, and we will need to be fair, and we need to be more efficient in timing also. I mean, I know what you're doing here, but they have been requesting their own, and I know TRCA has given us the most hard time. It's been 3 years. It's been outstanding, the committee, but this is not the place to talk about it. But I just want to make sure that nothing is done that is not in the favor of the people that own that property.
Yes, Councillor Usman. So with that, we'll follow up with you and we'll get a meeting arranged and let's have a conversation so we can keep that going. That is not the intent of ramming something through. This is a draft demonstration plan with a concept. We're out looking for feedback and input. So let's see what we can do on that. And I'm very familiar with the TRC elements that you're talking about as well. So let's have a conversation about that one.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I see that there is a question from somebody that's called iPhone. I do have to indicate that we are running tight. We may end up having to go a little bit over 8:30 if that is okay with participants, because I do realize we're at slide 29 and we still have another, I believe, 10 slides to go through. So I think after this, we'll take one more question and then we'll have to get moving on. So that way we can get through the rest of the stack. Somebody called iPhone. Okay, so I think we'll move on. I see Regional Councillor Jolie, you have a comment or question? Good evening.
Just number 2, is that the site where the Home Depot is?
Blair, did you want to start with that one?
Number two land. Yeah, is this the Home Depot site?
I believe the Home Depot site's actually south of that. I believe it's actually where the park is showing, because that would be Castlemore. Is the East Westerly.
Okay, I know right beside Home Depot, there's still a big chunk of land empty there. Okay, so that's not on number 2, right?
Correct.
So it's on this green one here.
Blair, that's correct, right? The Home Depot site is the one just south of, that's Castlemore, right on the north side of that park.
Okay, so what can be built here?
So within that site, there of course is a park, there's mixed use, there is looking at mixed use high rises, I believe, in that area, as well as having some mixed use with retail and others. So down along the spine where you see 6, the whole point of that area is to change that area from being essentially a provincial highway into a main street where people want to walk, have restaurants, have different mixed uses, try and create that vision. And actually, thank you, Councillor Ray, and also Regional Councillor Jones for your commentary about the Niagara and the Lake and the sizes. Those types of visions, whether we can recreate Niagara and the Lake, is actually a beautiful area. But really, we're really trying to transform this, create a main street, create a transit-oriented community, have a place where people want to go out, eat, get their amenities. Some of the participants have talked about being able to walk and get their amenities, get their services. So that's really what we're trying to achieve here, is really change the dynamic of this location.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so with that, Blair, if we can move on, please.
Excuse me. Hi, sorry. This was the person that was for the iPhone. I wasn't able to get the mute and mic unmuted, and then somehow I got kicked off the meeting. So I apologize. Is it okay if I quickly just mention my comment?
Yes, definitely, please.
Great. I just wanted to say that I have some concerns around the number of allocated spaces that seem to be delineated as the mixed use high rises along Markham Road that, based on the 3D view that was shown earlier, seem to be higher and bigger than the existing condos that are currently on Markham Road. I know that a number of the councillors have spoken about landscaping and the aesthetics of Markham Road in general. So I'm just wondering about, how people feel about the impact of that.
No, and that's an excellent comment. And that's kind of what we're trying to look for, is that type of feedback and feel. And that's why we created that draft demonstration plan. We want to find out, is that what people are looking for or not? Because we're looking within those condos, the existing ones, we're looking within approximately 14 stories is generally what they are for the existing. Some of the newer built form within that demonstration plan is showing anywhere from, I believe it's 14 to, or 15 to 20, or 15 to 22. It's something in that range. So there is some increased density being shown along that area. And what we're looking to hear is that type of feedback. Is that too much for a Main Street feel? Is that just about right? How does that sort of look? And also building on the comments from Regional Councillor Jolie and looking at the fact of what are we trying to create for that area? We want to create a transformation. We don't want a provincial highway, I don't believe, running up and down in that location.
Yeah, I just feel like it would be a lot of concrete.
Okay, well, thank you for that. As I said, we're looking for that type of feedback. So we'll take that back. And then if you have additional comments or feedback, please weigh in through the Your Voice Markham. You'll have our email addresses at the end of this presentation as well. Okay, so Blair.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. So the next theme that we're going to take a look at is precincts, gateways, and placemaking opportunities. Again, on the left-hand side here, you can see some components and some key statistics, and the map on the right-hand side and adjacent legend sort of gives you a sense of how everything is laid out. So just to provide you with a quick overview, the draft demonstration plan establishes 3 precincts, which you can see here. They respond to their unique context, built form considerations, and land use mix. But the intent is that they also maintain a sense of cohesion from one to the other and a shared sense of identity. That is the Mountjoy community. It also incorporates 2 gateways, which bookend the northern and southern extents of the secondary plan area. You can see at Major Mackenzie Drive East at the top end of the map, and 16th Avenue on the south. And these represent significant opportunities for landmark developments, open space treatments, public art, and wayfinding. Finally, it also identifies a few supplementary placemaking opportunities at major intersections, as you can see in the asterisks. Again, here for ease of reference and consideration in advance of an upcoming poll and discussion, this slide is intended to quickly summarize some of the key policy directions that we've established with respect to gateways and placemaking opportunities. Just to really quickly sort of dive into the details a little bit here, the North Precinct is anticipated to include a direct connection to the potential GHOST station site at Major Mackenzie Drive East, as well as the realigned and reconfigured Greenway and Mountjoy Creek system, and a pedestrian bridge or tunnel, as described earlier, and a new school site with the potential to integrate with a larger mixed-use development. Again, the specific sort of siting of the pedestrian bridge or tunnel will be subject to further study. The central and southern precincts share what I mentioned earlier as the portions of the GO Station mixed-use node at Mount Joy GO Station. So this area is anticipated to include a gateway plaza that's framed by active podiums of developments, as well as a linear pedestrian muse, which connects that plaza from Markham Road down to a new public park and transit plaza to sort of the southeast. The central precinct is also anticipated to include a mixed-use employment hub, which is envisioned to include a range of clean and technology-based light industrial manufacturing and distribution uses and facilities which have the capability to coexist harmoniously alongside commercial, office, and residential uses on upper stories. So it's an employment space, but it's also flexible and dynamic. The employment hub will augment and integrate with adjacent and surrounding mixed-use developments along Markham Road, as well as within the adjacent GO Station mixed-use node to the south. And finally, the South Precinct is anticipated to include, again, this sort of fine-grained retail environment, inclusive of the community-based retail uses that currently serve existing residents and site visitors, and which help establish a transition to the Markham Village area to the south from the more sort of densely developed lands around the Mount Joy GO Station to the north. A pedestrian bridge or tunnel will connect the secondary plant area to Mount Joy Community Center and Park to the east, which is a major parkland and open space and community services and facilities asset in close proximity. And again, the siting of the bridge or tunnel will be subject to further study. So this slide just really illustrates some of the key components of the GO Station mixed-use node, which again includes the Mount Joy GO Station area and the mixed-use employment hub. So key elements of this include transit-oriented development on the east side of the Stouffville Rail Corridor that has the potential to add additional development there, introducing a transit plaza, integrating the new Mount Joy GO Station within the base of the mixed-use development, and potentially introducing a new park on the west side of Anderson Avenue, adjacent the station development itself. Again, for ease of reference, this slide summarizes key policy directions that we have prepared with respect to Mount Joy and Major Mackenzie Drive GO Station areas specifically. And additionally, this slide summarizes some of our emerging policy directions regarding the mixed-use employment hub. So again, we're curious to know, this is what we've heard to date. We'd like to know, did we get it right? Or is anything missing? Are there any considerations that are needed as we sort of proceed through the next stage of the study? So with that, I will hand it back over to Shonda, who's going to lead us through a poll and discussion.
So just as an administrative moment, we've had some really fantastic feedback through this evening, and actually some of the spots that we've gone through have gone a little longer than we'd expected. And I do want to respect people's time, given that we are over by a little bit. I'm hoping that people can sort of bear with us for approximately 5 to 8 more minutes, so we can just sort of get through the remaining pieces. We're going to skip the poll for this point, but as I said, the poll is all going to be put up as a survey on Your Voice Markham. So please feel free to log into that, fill it in, and give us your feedback. And then, as I said before, all of our contact information is there. We really want to hear all of your feedback. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Shonda, and we're going to just see if there's any questions regarding this next step.
Sure, and maybe if I could direct some of the questions a little bit. You all heard Blair present about what the suggested potential school site is, as identified in the North Precinct, and the idea of private development in and around it. And we wondered if there's any thoughts about that. And maybe I'll just add a couple of other thoughts, and you can think about this and respond. Is in addition to any of the other placemaking opportunities identified within the draft demonstration plan, you could see that through the maps, but also through some of the precedent images. Are there other placemaking opportunities that you think would be really important to include? And if so, it would be great if you could let us know where. And in a similar kind of way, from a gateway opportunity point of view, just understanding that people aren't necessarily coming from either end of Markham Road, that gateways also exist as people are traversing the site and accessing it from the east or the west as well. Where would those important gateway opportunities be, and how might we mark or signal that? So we'll open up the floor for a few moments to take some feedback.
Okay, I see Gabe, you have a question.
Thanks, Daryl. More of a comment. Shonda, I agree with you. East-west gateways are important as well. Obviously, with the Edward Jeffrey connection, and the potential tunnel or bridge over linking to Mount Joy Park, we feel that would be an opportunity to consider a gateway location as well, not only for the Mount Joy community along, on either side of Markham Road, but also for the community to the west of Markham Road for that. So, and especially at the intersection of, I guess, looks like 2 new minor collector roads with the Edward Jeffreys extension and the proposed north-south road, which north of Edward Jeffreys on our site is proposed to be a minor collector as well. We feel that it would be a good location for a gateway. On the issue of schools, our site, it's for north, but I'm just wondering, in a context like this where it's going to be more urban and typical school sizes, has any discussions been had with either boards whether they would consider an urban school, at the base of a condo in a podium? And I'll stop it there. Thank you.
So that's an excellent question, Gabe. That's something that we're always interested in, to try and figure out how we can most efficiently use our land. We have had some initial conversations, but as part of the circulation on this interim report and draft demonstration plan, it has gone out to the school boards. So we sort of want to see what their thinking is, because this draft demonstration plan is showing a pretty robust integrated type of development with both residential, mixed use on top of the school. So it'll be interesting to see on kind of what the feedback is on that. And of course, the other thing that we're trying to think about is, based on our further analysis around the population yields within this draft plan or this draft area for this demonstration plan, is whether we're going to actually need to accommodate another school site. So, because there is a formulaic approach of looking at what the population would be to whether we need another site. So that's part of the conversation as well, depending on when we refine, as the numbers continue to refine.
Daryl, is that school identified as an elementary level, or is a possibility of a secondary school?
Currently, it's identified for an elementary. There are other schools, including secondary, just east of this site. So, and it hasn't been identified for that type of for secondary. But having said that, as I said, it's out for circulation with the school board, so we'll get a better sense from them as they sort of look at it and figure out their projections and needs.
Great. Thank you.
I see Rosemary Humphreys.
Hey again, Daryl. Yes, we would prefer or would like the consulting team to consider spreading out the community land uses on the Krashnik property such that they're not faced with having a school, a park, a multi-use trail, and of course an open water course channel, all located within their own property. I actually believe that their property has been inundated with community land uses on an unnecessary basis, and I would ask that the team consider relocating some of these uses to other properties within the study area.
Okay, thank you, Rosemary. And of course, we can have further conversations about this as we go. I always look forward to meeting with you and chatting.
Thank you.
Okay, I see that that's it for questions at this point. So can we move back to the presentation? We only have a couple of slides left, and then we can get people out for the rest of their evenings.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so with respect to phasing, the draft demonstration plan anticipates that development will occur in multiple phases over the next 25 years or longer. This will begin with recently approved projects and active planning applications, following which developments within the Mount Joy GO station area will be prioritized for development alongside large and consolidated properties, in addition to underutilized properties, before smaller, more fragmented, encumbered, and more heavily utilized properties are redeveloped. That's the vision. That's what's anticipated. As described earlier, we're not looking at specifically implementing development on private lands within specific timeframes. This is what is anticipated to occur based on the information that we have available. The interim report outlines some key tools which may be used to implement the secondary plan. And Daryl highlighted some of these earlier. Specifically, direction is being provided with respect to the coordination of development, existing lawful uses on land, conveyance of lands, landowner agreements, development phasing plans, zoning, future studies, and other considerations. For ease of reference, here's a quick list of the types of tools that we're considering. So they include inclusionary zoning, community planning permit system, environmental assessments for Markham Road, business improvement area and community improvement plan, urban design guidelines, interim development plans for the Mount Joy GO Station area, and design competitions. We're also looking at the timing and sequencing of capital infrastructure projects, as well as the coordination that's necessary with key stakeholders with respect to transit-oriented development potential around station sites, the viability of the Major Mackenzie GO Station, and the Donald Cousins Parkway extension specifically. So with that, I will hand it back over to Daryl, who's going to make some concluding remarks.
Okay, well, I would like to sort of start off with thanking everybody for being with us tonight. I'd like to thank our members of council. I'd like to thank the public, stakeholders, agencies, and also I want to put out a special thanks to all of the Markham staff that have helped sort of pull this evening together and help deliver this. I also want to thank our consultant team, as it's been quite a partnership as we've gone through trying to deliver these and share this information. We've heard a lot of really great feedback. Apologize for keeping everybody a little bit later than we'd anticipated, but I have to say, I really want to thank everyone. This has been really helpful. It's given us a lot of things to think about the treatment of Markham Road, treatment of our schools, treatment of the linkages, connections, parks, open space, how these things all fit together. What's the scale of these things? The densities, are they appropriate? How do they fit? So taking all of those types of things into consideration, please feel free, as I've mentioned before, you can see on our page or on this slide, the Your Voice Markham website. You can also just Google it, Your Voice Markham. You'll find it right on the front page with a link right into Your Markham Road, Mount Joy. Please take a look at that. We're going to try and have this presentation up, and then we're going to also put up the live stream of this on that page as well. So we're going to get this presentation up hopefully tomorrow, and then we'll also be looking to get the survey up either tomorrow or Monday. So that way you can continue sort of providing that feedback, but don't stop there. You can also see at the bottom, you can see my email address as well as Shonda's. So please feel free, share all of your comments with us. We really want to hear it. We want to get this right as we continue the work, because as I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, once we're through this round of consultation and hearing this type of feedback and taking that all into account, we're going to be going really heavy into a modeling phase, really testing all of those numbers, testing the design, testing the transportation, testing the servicing, in order to roll that all up and create a final study that would then be coming back and being presented back to our council. So with that, I do want to thank everybody for your time. And with that, I bid you adieu and have yourselves a fantastic evening. Thank you.